Hey, Rebecca.
Yes.
So Mano is in the waiting room. Are you able to?
Oh, okay. So we
make him
can
there?
open it up and then I could just make him a panelist.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to open up the webinar. Okay.
Okay.
All right. We're starting to get people streaming into the webinar. So welcome everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
We're going to get started literally in 2 minutes. So grab your coffee, grab your energy drink.
Oh, I don't want to see because they can see you, right?
No, you can't see him. I should do this. Boom.
Got all our panelists here, moderators here. I'm excited because this is the first workshop of the year for NATAS Chicago Midwest. So welcome everybody. We'll get started at 11 o'clock. Welcome, welcome. Give it one more minute and we will get started. All right. All right, it is 11 o'clock, so welcome everybody to the first NATAS Chicago Midwest workshop of the year. My name is John Owens. I am the NATAS Chicago Midwest chapter president, and this is a workshop on episodic TV production in Chicago. We'll be featuring a number of workshops throughout the year, primarily on Saturday mornings, both produced by the main board and our junior board in Chicago, and we'll occasionally feature workshops from the other 18 NATAS chapters nationwide, but primarily we'll be featuring Chicago-related events chaired by Afia Owusu, who's our workshop chair. Next Saturday, or actually Saturday, December 3rd, we'll have one that is going to be sponsored by the junior board called Majoring in Media.
Oh, it's December 12th. Sorry.
My apologies, Rebecca. December 12th, Majoring in Media. So go to our website for more information. It's specifically targeted towards high school students and college students interested in a career in the media. Also, I have to mention that we have our first live and in-person Emmys event in 3 years coming up on Saturday, December 3rd at the Marriott Hotel in downtown Chicago. It's hosted by Sultan Salahuddin, who many of you know is the co-host of the great HBO Max sitcom Southside. So we're really excited. Tickets are still available online at chicagoemmyonline.org. So please go to our website. And if you haven't bought tickets yet, please buy tickets. And finally, before I turn it over to Ronan, just a reminder that we don't do just Emmys. We also have a educational foundation called the NATAS Chicago Foundation, and we provide scholarships to deserving high school and college students who are studying journalism or broadcast television, TV production, communications. Please go online again to chicagoemmyonline.org to learn more about the foundation or to donate. We are actively looking for donations to fund scholarships. We've distributed more than $500,000 in scholarships to students going back 25 years. And we're one of the strongest NATAS chapters in the country in that regard. So please go online and donate. Or if you know of a student who is interested in a scholarship, that student can apply for a scholarship as well. And so without further ado, we have a very active junior board. headed by the man that you see right here, Ronan Morrissey. And Ronan is also the moderator today of our event, Episodic TV production in Chicago. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ronan, who will introduce us to our great panel today. Go ahead, Ronan.
Thank you, John. Appreciate all of your help with helping me putting this together, along with Rebecca and Afia. Really appreciate your guidance with this. So I couldn't have done it without you guys. So to start off, for the audience members, this is a webinar. It's a panel discussion with some local professionals that you see here. They have various backgrounds in episodic TV production. The main goal is we're going to dive into what it's like to prep for an episode of television like Chicago Fire, and then also provide insight to like what their day-to-day is like, how they got started, and giving advice for pursuing careers and breaking into the industry in Chicago as a whole. So let's start off with some introductions, and I'll kind of just take it to you guys to kind of get the conversation flowing. So we'll just begin, kind of just start with your name, what your title is, which production you're currently working on, and sort of kind of get into how you got started and things like that. So let's start with Tim.
Hey everybody, my name's Tim Jacobs. I'm a first assistant director here in Chicago. I work on Chicago Fire. I got started, I went to Columbia College here in Chicago. And basically that's the angle that I got into the industry at. It's funny, like in high school, I was kind of interested in film and had no idea there was even a film industry in Chicago. And then, you know, you kind of have your mind expanded when you go to college. So in college, I worked on a ton of student films. I worked on a ton of independent films, and eventually applied for an internship through the school. And that internship ended up being for the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, which was 2009. And on that show, I met a guy named Stefan Rand, and I basically worked for him for, you know, my entire adult life, and that's how I got into the industry.
Awesome, thank you. And let's go to Ella.
Hi, my name is Ella Lubienski. I'm a second AC or second camera assistant here in town. And I, like Tim, I went to school here, except I went to DePaul. And similarly, didn't really realize there was that much of an industry here until I got to school. And in school was given a lot of opportunities and connections to be able to make the move into the television industry here. And I've basically been working on film and television here for since graduating. And most recently I finished a Disney Channel show that was in town. Now I'm what's called day playing, which means that I'm kind of working day to day on different shows as they need extra hands. And yeah.
Awesome. And let's kick it to Mono. And you're muted.
Sorry, Mono Wilborn. Man, I'm what's called a location manager in the film industry. I mean, I'm assuming, get around to what the specifics of that are. But I am originally from Mississippi. I moved here when I was about 10 years old. Always had a fascination with tinkering and logistical things, you know, planning trips and those kinds of things. I went to see the Bozo Show. I guess it's kind of my origin story. Went to see the Bozo Show as a kid. It was at WGN up on Addison Street. And I was fascinated with the camera guys, not necessarily with what was happening, you know, in the show and seeing these huge pedestal cameras, you know. I loved it so much so my goal was to go to high school at Lane Tech High School, and I did, which was right across the street from WGN. That was kind of how my brain was thinking. Took radio, TV broadcasting in high school, interned at GN, and from there went to California for a while for school, transferred there, went to Columbia, downtown Chicago. From there, I started working at a television station in Tinley Park while doing little small shorts, horrible shorts, but we did a lot of them. And from there, I started, you know, working at NBC as a news gatherer, E&G crew. And then went back to worked at the small television station in Tinley Park called WJYS, worked at the 700 Club, all these as a production assistant. And then from there, just kind of worked my way up through, left that world. A friend of mine got a job as a PA, jumped on with him, and then kind of came up through the set. And then I was fascinated with what was happening in the office, transferred from there, became an office PA, and moved my way around that. Went back to set, and then I started ADing quite a bit, and then jumped on a movie as a location assistant, realized that's kind of where my head is, logistical minded. And I just kind of fell in love with it, and I've been on Chicago Fire now since season 3. And yeah, I love it.
Awesome. And Tony Lullo.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Hello, everybody. My name is Tony Lullo, also Anthony. My mother would call me, but I'm more or less known as Tony. I started as a film watcher because that's, you know, sitting on the couch with my mom and my sisters watching movies and grandparents and stuff. So I was always interested in movies. And then my best friend, his father owned a studio, Chicago Studio City. I started over there in apprenticeship in 1985, late 85 when I got out of high school. And I kind of been beating, you know, my way through that rental shop area and trying to get to my union card. And that's where, you know, after 3-4 years of an apprenticeship, you're hungry. And I got my union card in 1989, and I started working in the film business and TV. And Mano knows this too, and a lot of guys that worked here, and Kwame and all the guys that work in Chicago. We worked on R. Kelly's and this and that, so many different things, like music videos, like just to make a living. And that was like late 80s, early 90s and stuff. And so now the movie started, and we had kind of a business going here, and we had, you know, 400 members, and then we turned into 1,200 members, and then we turned into 2,000 members in our union. So throughout that time, just kind of like, I want to say for myself, I wanted to learn, and a couple people will tell you that I tried to learn every aspect of 476. I wanted to do every job, and so that made me hungry, and learning how to do the dolly and doing camera stuff and being around set dressers and then handing out cigarettes on Road to Perdition, you know, just I would take any gig I could get because of the hunger, you know. And
Yes.
I talk about it passionately, and I sometimes start crying about it, but it's a little easier now. There's so much work to be had and so many young people to like bring us into the next generation that I'm like, I feel like we came, we saw, and then we just distributed bodies all over the business. And
Absolutely.
I'll start crying if I go on, but here I am 35 years later, and I'm still pounding the pavement with the rest of the guys. And I think maybe another 10 years before my body gives way, but for the most part, I'm here until they get rid of me. You know what I'm saying? But I've been with Chicago Fire since day one on the pilot. And here I am 12 years later, and it's been a lifetime of teaching and learning from different people and bodies. And this guy leaves and another guy comes in. So Chicago Fire, what can we say? One Chicago love. It's a beginning, and then it turned into this juggernaut. And I'm a fan. I cry every time when I watch the show. You know what I mean? It's like, that's who I am. But on to the next one. Here we go.
Nice
I
one.
rambled a little bit. It
I
was
love
a bit of
it.
rambling.
Perfect.
Okay, great. I'm
Wouldn't be
going mute.
authentic if it
Goodbye.
wasn't. Thank you so much for everybody, the introductions, so we have everyone's background. So we'll kind of just get into some of the questions. The first one being, so you get the script for the next episode. What are the things that you and your department do to get ready for it? You know, what are the elements that you look for in the script? What are you in charge of? What type of meetings you have to set up, et cetera, things like that. So let's start with, we'll start with Tim again. I'll kind of go in the same order.
All right, so when you get a script, the first thing you should do is read it. I know it sounds very obvious, but it is a very important step. It's a very important first step. And quite often you've got you've got very little time with the script before you have to start working on it. So it comes fast and furious. It's not uncommon that I'll have our first production-wide meeting having only read the script once, about, finished it, half hour before the meeting. So that's a big step. And when you're reading it, yeah, you gotta, as an assistant director, kind of my job is to tie all the elements that are going to be in front of the camera kind of conceptually together and make sure that everyone knows what's going to be expected of them as we go through the script. So to kind of like wrap my head around it, I break the script down into each department that exists on the set. So one of the things I look for is like extras. What kind of extras are we going to need? And we got to talk about that. Props, what special props are we going to have? On Chicago Fire, we've got a gazillion firefighter stuff, but sometimes in an episode there's things that are outside the box. And so we got to talk about that. Wardrobe, makeup, actors, who are we going to cast versus who is going to be cast, meaning who's going to have a SAG card and have lines, and who's going to be a member of the cast versus an extra. Or sometimes on Chicago Fire, we deal with this scenario a lot where, it could just be a stunt guy. Maybe the character doesn't have a lot of performance, but is in a lot of danger, and it's just easier to hire a stunt guy for that role. So that's something I consider kind of out loud with the group. We talk about vehicles. On fire, it's fire trucks, but sometimes, we had an episode recently where there's 100 million SWAT guys and CPD and bomb stuff. So there's that kind of scenario, personal cars, stuff like that. Set dressing, special effects is a huge one. Obviously, when we're talking about fires, we gotta nail down what's going to come with that. I mean, I can talk all day about fires, but I know Mono is going to have a lot more. It's what we do is wild. And like I said, stunts, a big thing that we look for in a script right away is what are we going to shoot on location versus what's going to be a set. And what can be a location. If we're going to be inside a room that's on fire, we've got to build it. We can't really do it. But if, so there's kind of like scenarios like that. And I think the final kind of abstract thing that I look for when I'm initially going through a script is actually the blocking of a scene. A lot of times, what is written on the page is something that is difficult to translate into reality. So I like to talk about these things that maybe are more abstract, so that the director can start thinking of them, the production designer can start thinking of them, and yeah, that kind of thing.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll go to Ella.
For me, I would say I definitely read the scripts, but they're less important than what's called a one-liner, which is basically a shooting schedule. And that's something that comes from Tim's department. And that for me is really key, because that tells me which scenes we're shooting when and where we're shooting them. So for the camera department, what we're looking for is what additional gear might we need? Are we going to need additional labor? So if we see that we have a huge stunt sequence one day, we might want extra cameras for that. So we need to talk to the rental house. We need to order those items. We might be talking to like the grip department to see, are we going to be using a crane or any specialty kind of camera support equipment? For me, as the key second AC, what I'm doing is hiring additional labor. So I also look, if we have additional cameras, that means we need another camera operator, another first assistant and second assistant. And we might want additional people helping with the video village, like the monitors, things like that. So that's really what I'm looking for when we get a new script, or ideally a new one-liner. And kind of like Tim said, sometimes those come late in the game. Like ideally, I like to get a one-liner a few days before the next next episode starts, but sometimes it comes in the day before. And so we're scrambling to book people. And then we do also look at locations, like if we're in a location that's going to be a really difficult load in or load out, or we're moving from a lot of different locations in one day, we might want extra people to help with that. Or we'll talk to the locations department to see, like, you know, we're in a 3rd floor apartment. Does that have an elevator? Are we going to be carrying gear up? Are we out in the woods? Do we need gators that are like big, kind of like go-karts to carry things around? So that's what we look for when we're prepping for the next episode.
Awesome. And Mono.
Okay. So imagine reading a book, and everything that you have read in that book, every place you've gone, every vehicle town you've driven through, all the scenes in the coffee shops and all of those, right? That's what my department does. So we provide options so that the director and the first AD and the producers and production designers can actually pick the locations that you have just read in that book, and in our case, the script. So we have to imagine if it's coffee shop, let's call it, right? If a coffee shop is just that in the script, my job is to say, well, what kind of coffee shop? What neighborhood is it in? Or what economic background are the people in that shop? Does it matter? You know, can it be, or is it schedule related? Is it something that I have to find that based on Tim's schedule now, because maybe it's a bigger scene happening down the street, but it doesn't fill a day. So we need to, now this coffee shop needs to live because there's another anchor location. But what we do in the locations department after I break the script down myself in terms of what these locations are. And if I have questions about them before our first meeting, I'll go talk to the producers about, hey, what do they actually mean about this house? You know, what is this? How long will this drive be? Because again, in the locations department, if there's a driving scene, we have to have all the police and the support to cover the length of whatever that driving sequence is. So again, getting back into that logistical mindset, like I put the pieces of the puzzle together. All right, we need 8 blocks of run for this driving sequence. That means if they're cross streets, we have to have police on either side of the intersection, in alleys. So we gotta, are we making all the traffic lights go green? So I need the traffic light person. So for us, for initially getting the script, I break it down to just those components, ask the questions I need to ask, and then we have location scouts that are actually out there providing options. Sometimes we might have 8 options for a coffee shop. There's a location we're looking for right now. We have 40 choices for it, but we keep going in this 8-day prep that we have until we find something that works. Either it works logistically, it works, the homeowners are fine with it, the business owners are fine with it, the city saying, yes, you can close that intersection down on that day, but not that day, during this time of day, not that time of day. So, but anyway, so I do that broad stroke breakdown, ask the questions I have, and then we have our first initial meeting, the concept meeting, where the first AD controls that meeting and just kind of breaking down what us kind of as a group reading that script together for the first time. And we kind of get the concept of what the writers are thinking. And then we ask broad stroke questions at that meeting. And after that, we start as a group going out and looking for some of these places. Some we like, we might pick on the first day, second day. Some we, you know, during the 8-day prep, maybe we don't even pick until the 6th day. But again, logistics. But for us, it's a collaborative effort from all departments. And we, you know, play nice together in the pool we're in, but broad stroking it all, you do the basic breakdown and then kind of collaborate until you get to the final step.
Awesome. Thank you. That was really good insight. And I'll go to Tony in a minute, but I also kind of wanted to add in that for those that don't know, for an episode like Chicago Fire or PD or Med, that the typical prep time frame is about 8 days, and sometimes you can get a 9th or a 10th day for prep as well. So you kind of keep in mind that they pretty much have like just under like 2 weeks to kind of like put an episode like this together. So Tony, we'll go to you. And what's your title? I think we missed that in the introduction.
Oh, copy. So I'm the gaffer of Chicago Fire and also the second DP, and I've operated as well. So yeah, that's kind of my title. I'm just a fill-in guy for Will when he goes scouting, Will Eichler. And other than that, it's kind of like day to day for us. Electrically, I should say, on the shooting crew is different. What Mana was kind of saying is that whole stuff to find locations is like so tough, but once they get them and they start to distribute them, I'm like that other layer. I'm more the shooting crew. So now me and my prep guys start to figure out, once they get locations, hey, is that cool? Let's see if we could get a rooftop or get a condor there. And it's like there's no time to like say, oh, dang it, we can't do it. You know what I mean? Like, no, you have to get on board and due diligence. I've said it before to people. I don't know if anybody's kind of feels it, but it's television is diligence. You've got to go forward is the only direction. And like COVID came and knocked us back and a little bit, but for that prep, once I read the script once, I got to do it again before we start shooting it. So it's like two times I try to read the script before we start going. And then I could kind of feel like what we need as far as lighting stuff and fire. When they say we can't shoot at a location, we have to go to the burn stage. No problem. That's easy for us. We put a bunch of stuff there. Those guys make a bunch of fires. It's our controlled environment. So, but also, when special effects sets up those light boxes and smoke machines and stuff at funeral homes and whatnot, and the different hoods and stuff, it's like that layer that we only get a couple days, maybe a day to say, okay, just hit it with everything we got. Let's surround it with power. As far as my department goes, I want to always have more than enough. But in television, sometimes you can only give a certain amount because of the budget and because of, you have to be smart, you know what I mean? You have to like be a little more frugal on television shows, but once again, once we get those one-liners that are so important, the breakdown is by my best boy, Kevin Weiser, and I have a dog in the room, sorry. Yes. And so the breakdown is so important for those guys because they're kind of the mechanics of it all. I was told by a DP that, just let the mechanics do the work. You know what I mean? And that's the mechanics. You look at this row of people up here and we're the mechanics that we put the stuff together and hands and feet on the ground type of labor. But once that one-liner comes and we start to feed off it, it's actually kind of exciting because we want to finish our work. We want to move on. We want to hear the bell, right? We're moving on. That means we got it, check the gate, whatever they call it now, and we move on. So that's me. Done.
Awesome. So I think you've all sort of you've also touched upon it in your answers, but I kind of want to maybe go in a little bit more in depth with it because I think it could be kind of helpful knowing that there's not just there's 4 departments on here, but then there's like a dozen others as well that that are on the show. So when you're prepping and, within your own department, how do you coordinate the major set pieces of the script with other departments? So if there's an episode calls like for a house fire, the whole house is on fire, what are the things that you would do with special effects and props and set deck with your department? Like, what are the communications that you would have with other departments, kind of going vice versa? So let's start with Ella this time around, and we'll kind of switch up the order.
I kind of ran through it already, but basically the big departments for camera to talk to are our grips so that we can know what camera support is going to happen. If we're doing a big crane thing or car driving stuff, we want to talk with them to make sure that everything's going to happen in a safe way and that we have all the tools we need to do that. And then also locations is a big department for us to talk to. And then we also do just kind of stay in communication with everyone else, because you never know what might come up. Maybe the lighting department wants to, you know, put a light on the camera. I've been on a show where they had like a ring light they would put on the matte box. Or we want to be talking with costumes because they have a certain costume that, I don't know, they want to test or something like that. Or oftentimes we're testing practical lights that might be on the set that might have flicker on them. So sometimes we'll test that stuff in advance to make sure it's not an issue when we get to shooting. And then we're also, like me as a camera assistant, I'm also talking to my boss, the DP, to see if we're going to be bringing in any special lenses or filters or things like that that we would need to specifically get in for something.
Awesome. Mano? You're on mute.
Can you repeat the question one more time? I just want to make sure I answer properly.
Yeah, of course. So during your prep as a locations manager, how do you coordinate, you know, other major set pieces of the script with other departments? Like, what are some of the conversations you would have with special effects or props or set deck?
Yeah, so after getting our initial pass of the script, after our concept meeting, I would then go to the production designer to say that's my first stop. It would be, okay, let's just talk specifically about a house fire. All right, we're looking for homes, but in this fire, how many windows do you think we're going to have fire out of? How big of a fire is it? He'll say at that point, because he's very smart, I'm not sure yet, which is non-committal, which is great. So for us, I start with him, because, you know, sometimes the fire is actual practical fire. Tony touched on it. What happens in these homes, in these fires, is obviously when you see it on television, it looks like the building is on fire, right? But what happens is the first step after the scout has found the home, after we've spoken with the homeowner about this wacky idea we have, which is setting your home on fire. And by the way, all the homes that we do set on fire are brick, not siding, but I'll get to that in 1 second. So we then have to determine, okay, how many homeowners how many people live in the home? Most of the time it's a couple with some kids. So we'll say, you know, and maybe a dog. So then we talk about their lodging, putting them up, right? Because we're going to now come into your home to make this happen. So what happens is we come in, we take out, not us, so this is not my department, but this is special effects. So we go to effects. The way they do it is they take out the actual frame of the window all the way down to the sash and create a custom fit firebox that Tony touched on. It's a box that shoots propane out of the bottom, and they put some fake glass on it. And because propane burns so cleanly, above the window on the outside, we smoke age the window to make it look like it's, you know, the flames have been licking up and it's burning the window above it. And then that propane is run from the backside of the window through the house. Someone's on the valve. All right, turn up the flame. All right, turn down the flame. And it's happening. It might be 8 special effects guys, because it's however many boxes are in the house. So that's dealing with effects. You know, we deal with also Tony's department, because some of these lights, some of the fire, maybe on some of the side windows are just firelight, you know, which is they usually put some kind of plastic on the window and have some firelight on the inside to give that illusion that there's fire up there too. But all of this centers around Tim's schedule, right? So that tells me how much prep time we're going to have in this house. If he has it first up in his schedule, which he usually wouldn't, not a big thing, but usually toward the end of the schedule, that means then I say, okay, art department, how many days do you need to prep? Construction, how many days do you need? Special effects, how many days do you need? So I back up from their answer, however many prep days. If it shoots on the 10th and they need 5 days of prep, so we're in there prepping on the 4th. Because by the end, it's usually right before filming, there's a stunt rehearsal in this set location. And then, so, you know, you're coordinating, what we do in addition to coordinating with the crew, we coordinate with the city to get the street closed, to get maybe electrical wires removed. We order police. We order the local fire department. So it's again, back to the logistical side of it. So after coordinating with our guys, our crew, we now take our efforts to the city to make sure we can secure the area, that we're prepping and or filming in.
Awesome. And I'll jump over to Tim to kind of piggyback off of what Mano was saying, and then we'll circle back to you, Tony.
Yeah, well, like Mano was saying, my function as the first AD is to find a good time to do, like a house fire. Often it kind of goes one way or the other. Either I pick a time or I'm told what time to do it. That's it's usually a healthy balance. And there's also times where if we can't make it work with Mano and I can't make it work on the schedule, now we got to go back to ground zero and figure out another place. That happens, So, initially attacking a house fire, the first thing that we're going to go do is go and see it. And we're just going to see it with Mano, the director, the production designer, and kind of brainstorm about everything. Like Mano was saying, you got to pick how many windows you want to have burning, and that's going to affect the workload later. Director always wants more, production designer usually wants less, and then there's a good compromise, what we need. While we're there, we're going to speculate kind of how we're going to shoot it. Are we going to use a technocrane? We're going to need a drone. This is a new tool. We've only been using them on fire for a few years now, but the drone comes out more and more often. While we're there, like Mano was saying, the interface with the city, we talk about, all right, well, the building's on fire and the fire trucks have to pull up. Where are the trucks pulling up from? How far is that going to go? And that will inform how many police do we need? Can we do it? Will the city allow us to do it before 9 a.m.? Sometimes they don't. We got to figure out another thing. We got to figure out, well, let's do this whole sequence and then go back in time and do the pull up last. There's scenarios like that, which is why I say, yes, it's like the AD is the guy that schedules it, but oftentimes you uncover what the limits of the schedule are and just kind of fall into all the pieces. It's like excavating a dinosaur or something. And with a situation as big as a fire, no department will ever go untouched, even if they don't come out in the prep process. Even like wardrobe, like Ella was saying, there's a safety element when we're using fire. And wardrobe, we're a fire show, so they've got 1 million bunker coats. So if we anticipate there's going to be a camera operator near fire, we'll tell wardrobe, hey, make sure you guys have some fire equipment for these guys to wear so that they're safe. We do that all the time. We were just a couple Saturdays ago, we were shooting right outside my old dorm at Columbia College, and we had this giant torch coming off a bus, and all the operators had to wear fire equipment around this torch because it was so hot, which is not something that we really anticipated until we were there and felt. So the closer you got, the more covered up you had to be. We'll rope stunts into it after we pick the location. If the idea is that the ladder goes up to the window, what kind of a ladder? Is it off the truck? How, if it's not off the truck, how tall is it? We'll talk to our CFD tech advisor, Chick, and he'll tell us, you need an extension ladder for this one or something smaller, bigger. And then that will lead into like, all right, well, the ladder's coming in. How many guys carry it? What training do we want to see on camera? Or, what, strategy would they use as firefighters? And all of these things kind of like snowball. And it's almost like a free form collaborative brainstorm once you're there, because you stand outside a location and you read the lines of a script out loud, and then you start imagining, where all these people are, and it informs a lot of what you're going to do.
Awesome. Tony.
Yowza.
Your thoughts to the question.
Yeah, kind of like you're talking now as we get a little closer to shooting this stuff, and like the guy said, the fireboxes and all that stuff is kind of like it all kind of falls into play once the cameras start to settle in, and the whole crew gets there and we start to wire in 3 cameras or maybe Technicrane, and we start to figure that stuff out in these rehearsals, that the marketing rehearsals, and it's kind of that it's the evolution of that script and that one-liner, and now cameras on the ground and feet on the ground, and now here comes the shooting crew, and here comes the pretty people, and we're going to put the actors in front of there, you know what I mean? And also I want to say for you, less headroom on your computer. Is that on purpose? Because it's driving me crazy because I'm a damn operator. God dang it, I hate my life. I do it at the television too sometimes. Love you, buddy. But you know what I'm saying? And these guys will contest, like when Mono shows up on set, right, Mono, and you see us with those cameras going, and like he knows, like he's done his job. He's put us in this position to shoot these lines, as Ella said. And Ella, you were wonderful depiction on breaking down that one-liner. Sometimes Tim doesn't understand this, but it is so vital to us. No, I'm just kidding, Tim. You know how it is. We're like, Tim, did you make that one-liner? Nudge, nudge, tick, tick. Tim, when's one-liner coming out? We get these twitches, one-liner. But once again, once those cameras settle on the ground, man, I'm telling you, like, it's magical, because everybody that is on the shooting crew, as well as the prep guys, as well as the building guys, the painters and the carpenters, and Tyler and his gang, and Paulie Schultz and his gang, and we just layers and layers and layers like an onion. And when that final thing comes to fruition, moving those cameras around, you could see it on the screen. We got a fun show. It's comical, but it's also technical. And Tim said it too, like Chick, for me, I met Chick. I was second unit backdraft when Chick was, he was so big, I didn't even know him. You know what I mean? Like, I was a little guy. But when I got to know Chick on Chicago Fire, he's my hero. And like, every time I see him, I'm like just because he's put his hands on real life, and he gives those actors a chance to learn that real life, as well as when the cameras start to shoot them. Like, it's kind of cool. And Tim will say it, and anybody on our crew will say it. Chick is the man, you know what I mean? Like, he gives us our stories. He shows us what ladder we're going to do. I mean, it's that simple, but sometimes I talk about him, and he's such a human as well. Like, you could talk to Chick about anything. Like, he's a social worker as well. So it's like, yeah, we're really lucky to be here. And like, did I go too far on this question? But these cameras, man, it's once we start putting those things on, and I know Tim feels it too, it's like you just want to get through your work and do good stuff, for these directors that come in. And that's something that attracted me to television, different directors. And these guys will tell you the same thing. We have our favorites and we have our not so favorites, but all together, when they come to us, they've been trained and they've been vetted, and all the guys above us make those decisions about our directors. So we never really get a bad director. We always get different ones. And that's the important thing, is the difference, because it's motion pictures, it's moving, everything changes. Boom.
Awesome. Awesome. For the audience, we've tossed around Chick's name. He's a consulting producer on Chicago Fire. As Tim says, also a technical advisor. I believe he's a former firefighter, and he has a huge hand in basically creating Chicago Fire, and has a big hand in what is firefighter stuff. And like, he's sort of like an advisor on that, and so much more and other things. If I got that correctly, if anyone else wanted to add to Chick's title. So we're kind of going to go shift. We kind of talked about your job, some of like the roadblocks that kind of come up, throughout as you guys like prep, whether it's like location based, and you just seems like you just kind of like work through it and we solve it. We kind of just adjust as we can. So when it comes time to shooting, I kind of want to like kind of go a bit more kind of in depth when it comes to like physically shooting a little bit. How does your job adjust? And I know Tim, like, you know, a prepping AD, once you go on set, as you know, once you're there is a bit different as, so I'm curious as well, like with Mono and your job's kind of how they adjust. So how does your job, does your focus shift to something different when it comes time to shooting your episode, things like that? How does your job kind of change as a whole? So we'll start with we'll start this time.
Starting with who again?
Mono.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right, so now we're shooting. So my department then becomes, on broad strokes, we become Century, right? So if this is the location, our job is to form perimeter around that location with security and police for starters, right? So we now become the watchers of the street, controlling if we're doing traffic. We're not us, but we are in contact with our fire department and our police sergeant. So we become now the department that protects the set, encompasses the set for the shooting crew to do what they do, right? So with that said, that means that we have police covering, you know, again, streets and alleys, and security guards watching the equipment, private security watching, looking out for our crew and our cast, right? And then in terms of the actual film day, we'll have maybe someone from the city that is turning the street lights on and off, or again, controlling the traffic lights, leaving them green or leaving them red. We deal with the city if we get there and there's a street light that is in the way. So we'll call the city and see if we can get that removed. So we do things like that again in prep, but on the shooting, most of the time the homeowners are gone or are away if we're filming interior. But if they are, like for instance, we just filmed at Park Ridge at the Pickwick movie theater. Beautiful. I'm not sure which episode it was this season, but it was episode 3. Gorgeous. If you haven't seen it, please go take a look at that. We did a night fire there, which I always love. To me, they look the best. But anyway, in Park Ridge, the classic Pickwick movie theater, for just an example. So what happens is, anytime we film in a building where it's connecting, if it's connecting to another building and there's a fire, everybody in that building, we have to evacuate for filming, right? So because just from a safety standpoint, if we're filming if fire's on the first floor, let's say, of a building, and it might be a 12-unit building, everybody in the building has to go. But that's another story. So, but say the Park Ridge piece, so we had the mayor there coming to visit, the fire chief kind of visit. So we also become, in addition to the Century, we're kind of the people that entertain or kind of hang out with the homeowners or the politicians or anybody that is curious about what's going on. If there's, like, for instance, in addition to that, on a shoot day, there's has a dog in their yard that's barking, or you hear landscapers, doing their work a block away or around the corner. Someone from the AD department will say, locations, yeah, I hear a lawnmower. Can you go deal with that? Or in dealing with that, what we do is say, hey, we're filming around the corner. Is there any way that you can come back either tomorrow or later today? So we're those people that we liaise with the real world while, again, forming this sort of cocoon around the production. So anything that comes up on that day, angry neighbor, curious neighbor. Our favorite question always is, how do I become an extra? And so we're the people that liaise with the real world, and whatever those scenarios are, endless of things that could possibly happen. We may have a permit. We bump heads on the permit. The city issued our permit, but there's also People's Gas, and we hear their trucks landing, and we're like, oh, what's going? So they're endless. and you have to be completely comfortable speaking with any and everyone, consoling people, like overly excited people, anywhere and everywhere in between. Mostly we deal with angry people or like, hey, how long are you gonna be here? You know, but our department is the one that sort of handles that, and we kind of got to keep a cool head, a level head at all times, because you may have a crew member that had a bad night or a bad day, and we have to kind of, you know, say, sorry, I know you can't have food in there, or you can't park there because, you know, and they'll say it's in a permanent area, but I know, but the homeowner, I told the homeowner, you know, so we liaise with the real world and the film crew, and if it's not seamless, then you'll feel it. But for us, you know, the guys, you know, I've been in this business 28 years. You know, I've worked in a lot of different departments, and every department that I've worked in, the common denominator is that you have to be able to speak with someone without, in my opinion, losing your cool. Or if you do lose your cool, be the bigger person. You know what? I'm sorry about that, because it's business, right? It's not friendship in the, you know, broad strokes, but over time, you've developed friendships with so many people. I can't even imagine, you know, Tone, you know, you've been going 35 years. I mean, the amount of people that we've come across from again, above the line to just crew, you know, you've gone to weddings and you've seen, you know, the birth of people's kids. And so my son is now working in the film business as in the camera department. So, but anyway, yeah, I'll stop there.
Awesome. No, that was really great insight. No, I really appreciate that answer, Mario. It was really, really in depth. I'm going to bounce it back to Tim again as like a piggyback, and then we'll bring it back to Alva.
Yeah, so for the assistant directors, I'm lucky enough to go to prep. Prep is like a very, in some ways it's very free form and relaxed, but I'm not, prep is not my favorite of it's not my favorite time of the episode. For me, I don't like the speculation and thinking about stuff, and well, we'll talk about it later, and kind of that part of it. What I love is being on set and shooting, because as an AD, when you come in to a set and you have a schedule, there's nothing that matters more than making the day and just getting through it and doing a good job and working hard. And like, I've been doing it since college, and like, it's just in my blood, and I love it. And I love that part of my job so much. The hours tend to, I think these days the hours tend to be a little bit longer in prep than they do on set. There's, you know, depending on how COVID affects you these days too. Last week we had some short hours, but next week we won't have so many. So basically for the AD, you go from planning to execution, and execution is, for me, where it's at. On top of that, there's this whole other thing that the assistant directors do, is like, I'm in charge of a pretty big department. And I also really love managing the people that I work with and the people that work for me. It's such a cool opportunity to like affect change in the world. You know, there's a lot of people that I worked with when I was coming up, where I learned like, hey, you know what? I don't want to be like that. I want to do things differently. And now I've gotten into this position where I can do things differently for the people underneath me. And it's so cool watching people grow and succeed and change and make decisions. And I really cherish that part of our job. It's very, you know, like, we make this TV show Chicago Fire, but what matters to me is like the people and the relationships and creating scenarios for people to succeed. I mean, that's kind of like what, like, if you really took an abstract view at being an assistant director, what you're trying to do is just provide, you know, an environment on set for people to succeed. Anybody, you know, is it a quiet space for the actor to perform? Is it, you know, is it a good condition for this, you know, the ACs to pull focus? Did you you know, leave enough did you leave enough space for people to ask questions that will go down and like later on down the road benefit the show? There's so many ways to look at it, and so that's a big part of my job. Also, once you get onto set and start shooting, you get to work so closely with the director, and you do in prep too, but once you're on set, it's just you. In some ways, it's just you and the director getting through the day, and the DP, everybody's involved. For sure, everybody's involved, but you and the director have gone through this prep process specifically, and you've talked about it a million ways and speculated about what you're going to do, and now you're on set, and it's like, it's you and him getting after it. That's really cool. Yeah, and there's other things, the assistant directors, once you're on set, you set the background, or your department's in charge of that. And that's a lot of fun too. We got, and Chicago Fire, the ADs are really great with it. We really love doing it. And so we always have a lot of fun, even if it's just 3 people in the firehouse. The PAs are really great about like finding some fun thing to do for the day, whether it's giving somebody a prop to go through that's just kind of fun, or what have you. And the ADs also were in big conjunction with the locations department. We're coordinating a lot of logistical stuff throughout the day, be it the effects crew is here 2 hours before crawl, managing something for the building they're going to be working on for the day, and they haven't had food, so the PAs come up with a plan to get them food, lunch for the actors, all these things. It sounds mundane, but getting lunch for 23 people within a certain amount of time frame is an operation, and it takes coordination between your people, the actors, what they want, the caterers to have it ready, the van drivers to get it there. Like there's so much that happens. Like Mano said, you and Tony too, you have to interface with so many people under so many conditions. It's just a really great thing. And I'll also piggyback on what Mano said. There's so many endless scenarios on set. Every time you get on set, something new is going to happen. I had a buddy who I came up with. He's an AD on Med now, Austin Harpole, and they gave him an opportunity the first last year. And he called me. He was nervous about taking the episode because of a stunt that was in it. And I told him, I was like, dude, no matter what scenario, if you open a script and it's new, there's going to be something in that script that's new and that you've never done before. And walking on this set every day is like that. No matter what, there's something new, there's some new challenge, and we all get to work together to overcome that. So, yeah.
No, that's an awesome answer. Ella was next, and then we'll go to Tony. And do you need a refresher on the question, or do you got it?
Oh, I feel good about it.
Cool.
Yeah. So for me, my day-to-day on set usually starts at the camera truck. So all of our gear generally will go on a truck overnight to get shipped from one location to another. And so we start at the truck to unload our gear and bring it into the location and start getting set up. And we kind of there's like a rhythm to the set. Usually you start a scene with a rehearsal. There's usually a private rehearsal that happens with just the director and the actors, maybe the AD and the writer and the script supervisor and the DP are there too. And then once they've got that scene in a good place, then they'll do what's called a marking rehearsal. So that serves to show the scene to the whole crew, so everyone really knows what we're about to shoot. But then also part of my job during that time is to mark the actors so that we know where they're going to land, and so that it's easily repeatable, particularly for the camera operators, for lighting, for the focus pullers. That's really key for the people in my department and the other departments the DP oversees. So once we've marked the scene, then we usually start setting up. So for me, during that time, I'm supporting my camera team, particularly my first AC and my operator. So if we're gonna do that scene handheld, me and my first AC are gonna build the camera into handheld mode, or maybe it needs to be steady cam. Maybe we need to put a certain lens on it to start getting things set up. And then once we're kind of in that setup mode, and the lighting departments are lighting, I will stand by and watch to make sure that the set is running smoothly. If my operator needs help because they're moving actors around or stand-ins around, I'll help with moving the marks. Or maybe they decide the lens that they put on is a bad call, we want to switch to a different one. I'm there to help facilitate that. So that's what happens kind of during the lighting mode. And then once the lighting and the camera movement and everything is in good place, we'll get the actors in and we'll start shooting the scene. And so my job then is to clap the slate, which is kind of like when I tell, I don't know, like family members or people outside the industry what my job is, like that's what I say I do, because that's what they know. And so doing that, I also work with the script supervisor to know what we put on the slate, because then that tells the post-production people information that they need. And then we do it all over again, start a new scene, rehearse it, mark it, light it, shoot it. And we kind of just repeat that throughout the day until we're done, and then we load the truck back up again. And I'll also say, like, my department is kind of weird in that we only have people on set. We don't have anyone who's off set who has an office. So all that pre-production stuff that I talked about, we're doing while we're on set. So we don't get time to kind of be away from set. I'm on my phone a lot when I'm doing a lot of that pre-production work, because I have to be kind of juggling these two jobs at once.
No, thank you for clarifying that. No, I think that is very insightful. And then Tony, we'll go to you for this question, and then we'll move on to a slightly different topic.
So daily MO, is that what we're on to, right? Yeah, so we show up in the morning. I like to be early. I've always said to the guys that on time is the new late, and just remember that saying, because being late doesn't work for me. And so I like to be early. There's always something to do when you get there early. There's a prep, there's somebody talking about something, but usually getting there in the morning, generators are turning on, the guys are walking the lines, making sure that the power's all connected properly. They start to head up the different lights that we need for the day work or the night work or whatever the situation is. Then they turn on the lines, and the guy will just casually put a meter on it and check, make sure that nothing's crazy or the generators, voltage is different or whatnot. And then we start, doing the marking rehearsals and getting people to, where are we going to put the gear? Where's the video village going to go? It's like, it's a big process, because before, this video village wasn't so easily set up. It was a different type of distribution before. It's so much easier to set up now than it was back in the day, where you used to run a cord to every camera, and then it would go back to a guy, so it's evolved, and it's so efficient now. And we put ourselves in a tent and we get ready. So that distribution of power in the morning is kind of like, I feel like my start of my day as far as the actual working goes, because then that you're safe with that gear. Maybe we got to put a generator over there, or a generator hidden behind a car. A lot of times, if we don't have Technicrane, I could put a smaller generator in. I don't like to burn the big generators unless I need them. And generators have changed. They're smaller amperages now. So you just take that all in effect. And with a show like Chicago Fire, since we are so much on the move, we always carry a van generator when we go out into the street, just to make it more efficient. Like I said, Technicrane needs this van generator because it draws a little more power sometimes at the point where the Technicrane's going in and out. So that morning is all plugging in stuff and getting ready. And then after that marking rehearsal, it's kind of, if we do lighting, it's something that we try to make as simplistic as possible for the wide setups. And then as we go in to see their faces, we want to make them pretty. These are the people that people love to see. And so, you want to get their kid and stuff like that. So it's all part, do I have to bring a little eye light in, or should I have this ready? Or sometimes it's not just a little eye light, maybe it's a big eye light, like a 12-foot by 12-foot eye light, versus a little handheld unit that I use. I have a little Tupperware unit that I use on the actor's eyes, just throughout my years of learning how to, put this little dot on people's eyes and so that you could see their faces. It's and that's part of the day. And then you know, as you move through the day, then lunches come up, and then pretty much it's kind of we're all trying to be like water in the sense of whatever this production gives to us, take the shape of that, you know, find that location and figure it all out. And it's from the beginning till the end. So the culmination of it is finishing our scenes on these locations, moving on to the next one. Boom.
Awesome. No, thank you so much. That was very, very in depth. Just a quick reminder for the audience, submit your questions. There'll be a short Q&A after this. We have just about an hour left, so we're almost at the finish line. So one more question before we kind of get into the fun topic of, you know, how do you break into the industry and all that fun jazz. Kind of similar to, you know, talking about the challenges that kind of are kind of coming about. But I think when I was in college, it was always told like, okay, you have the script and then they kind of go shoot it. But then as you know, you start working, you realize like, oh, well, the writers changed 5 pages here, they changed 10 pages here, then they changed this thing here and they changed this. So while you prep and sometimes while you shoot, like script changes just happen to occur. And in your guys' experience, what are some of the reasons for those changes and how does that sort of affect your departments? And you know, you could call back to something in the past that's happened, or just what are some of the common things that usually come up, you know, when writers sort of bring out new pages? We'll start with Tim this time.
Script changes. We are so lucky on Chicago Fire because we get very minimal script changes, and the big one 100% of the time that we're going to get are like name changes. You know, there's like, you know, there's a business name in the script and that goes through the legal process of making sure there isn't a likeness, and it kicks back and says, nope, there's already some business with that name, so you got to pick another one. That's 100% of the time we're going to get that with, you know, business, a character or something. The other thing that happens on Chicago Fire a lot with script changes is it's something that we ask for. So there's some incident that the writers have written that's so big that we don't know how to possibly do it, or it'll just take too much time to do. So we'll go back to them and say, hey, can you maybe simplify this a little bit? And they almost always will. The writers, they're not so worried necessarily about the action of the scene, but they're worried about like the, you know, what's going on with the characters and kind of the tone of the scene. So they'll find some way to shrink it down to something that's more manageable for production. And then let's see what else. A new one in the last few years is we get a lot of rewrites, you know, depending on if an actor is or is not available in relation to COVID. That happens quite a bit. And entire storylines can go up in smoke with that one these days. Yeah, that's it. Those are a lot of big ones. Yeah.
Awesome. And kind of going, I'll jump back, I'll go to Mano. How do those changes, how can they affect your department? And in the past, what are some of the ones that you've seen?
Well, if they're as simple as a name change, whatever, I'm you know, it's all fine. But when I'll use a reference, you know, when the coffee shop is now an elegant dinner, right? This meeting that was going to happen over coffee now happens over an intimate dinner or somewhere. So when those things happen, listen, the way I approach it and the way that I make sure that my department approaches things is just treat them like little widgets. You know, it's a plug and play thing. Yes. Is it hard? Who cares? Is it easy? Who cares? Like we're going to take whatever comes and make it happen within the time frame. Like Chicago has now a 72-hour turnaround on getting a permit to film. So if it is a coffee shop and then it turns into an intimate dinner, that means we're scouting for something else that's probably not within the permit we originally had. So now I have to go to Tim and say, hey, yeah, we found the restaurant, but you want to shoot it in 2 days, and we can't because we can't get street control for that, or we can't get parking for our working trucks for that. So he'll either, they'll either figure something out or figure out a way that, or I go and plead with the city. Okay, sorry, yes, I know it's 72 hours. Can I get it in 48? Or things of that nature, or 36. So for us, we take whatever the changes are as they come. I mean, and they happen sometimes from, we'll show up. And the script changes are one thing, but when we show up, if our tow truck driver is late, and we can't relocate these cars, that we need to park there, we then have to punt and, find an alternate location to land our vehicles until we can get an answer on why these cars haven't been towed, or why our tow truck driver has been late, or whatever. But we roll with all the punches. We have to be built that way. Everyone in this business has to be built that way, because you never know. Weather could ruin a day, like Tone and Tim brought up. I mean, the COVID is so big with us now that we have to be able to respond to whatever the changes are. But yeah, we just have to be ready at all times.
Awesome. And I'll go to Ella and kind of maybe rephrase the question, what do you guys do with your department, when there's like a sudden change, like how do you deal with it? Or, if you do get script changes, it does affect camera department. What's your experience with that like?
Yeah, I mean, like Mano said, we've got to roll with the punches. Like, I think everyone's job on set is to be a problem solver, with the resources that you have, with the knowledge and experience that you have. For cameras, script changes generally don't affect us too much because they're most often like a small dialogue change or something like that. But the last minute changes that we do get are like a camera being added, or with COVID, like someone getting sick and things like that. So there definitely are times where, like, 2 days beforehand, the director's like, you know what, I really want to use this very specific kind of lens to shoot this scene. And it's like, well, we got to get that for them. So we'll call up the rental house, and sometimes they'll ship that lens in from across the country and get it to us just in time. Other times it'll be decided relatively late in the game that they want to add a camera. Like I've had producers decide a few days beforehand or the day before, that they want an additional camera team the next day because of the work that we're doing. Or the last show that I was on, we started out with having 2 full-time camera teams, and about halfway through the show, they decided they wanted to add a 3rd full-time camera team. So that was our job, to source those people and source that equipment to make that happen.
Awesome. And then Tony, similarly, what are some of last minute changes that, as a gaffer, as someone who runs like the lighting and electrical department, what kind of comes up? And if you were able to kind of talk specifically with your relationship with the DP, you and the key grip, you're sort of like the DP's like, his left and right, their left and right hand. So,
Yeah.
How does that, does last minute changes from a DP that they give you, or, sometimes, like scheduling and some things like that, how does that sort of affect your department?
I think it's just kind of just like being conscious at the moment that we're shooting. It's like, you can't be so rigid in television. You can't be like, we can't do that. No, we can do that is the answer to those questions. We can do it. Okay, sometimes script changes are weird. So to have a script change, it happens. So, but it's such a minor thing on Chicago Fire, and Tim said it. Our writers are so connected with the show and so involved with the show that there's not much tweaking. And if it's done on set, and it's so simple to do. But once again, we're having COVID stuff, and you have to reroute if you're on stage, you could pull up a scene or not pull up a scene. But I know that in one of the scripts, this fella right here, I don't know if you could see it. Let me see. There we go. His name is James Russo, right? That's really Anthony Lullo, the mobster. He's in jail right now. He tried to kill Mills. That's a script thing happening. You know what I mean? Like, so, but you see what I'm saying? Like, it's being ready and having, you know what I mean? almost all the people that are on this screen, Ella, you're due. We'll put you in the show, but everybody else has had a role on Chicago Fire. I was in 817 to protect the child. Tim was just recently in one. Mono was in a scene, but it's fun to go to work every day. And these guys will tell you, we are on a phenomenon right now in One Chicago, and we started this. And it's really, we're so lucky to have this, you know, this medium of TV for one, but then Wolf Productions just giving us all the tools proper to do what we want to do, you know, and shoot their scripts. You know, it's like John Roman started this show. He was the first producer that, you know, and he had an ulcer by the time he left here because it was just so much pressure and the more smoke, more fire. We want more black smoke, you know. So when things change, like especially on the set, I feel like this company especially roll with it. It's like, we got this. We've seen it all before. In 12 seasons, 11 seasons, you've seen most things. You can handle it. You know what I'm saying?
Awesome. Yeah. And Ella, you wanted something to follow up with that?
Yeah, I also just wanted to say, generally changes don't come out of nowhere. Like if you're good at your job, you've built good relationships with other departments. So you start to hear rumblings of changes coming before they ever officially get announced. Or like for me, I really try to keep my ears open on set because I never know what conversation I'll overhear that's going to have important information that's going to get finalized later. But generally speaking, you kind of already have heard about the changes coming and are already able to start making a game plan before they get enacted.
Awesome. No, that's a really good point. So we're kind of towards the end of like the segment here. So we're kind of going to transition to just general, you know, kind of easy stuff, I think, for you guys working in Chicago and advice and breaking into the industry and things like that. So the first question with this, a bit of a two-part question, but you know, the film and TV industry, it's always been in Chicago, but just recently over the last 10 years, it's just spiked so dramatically just with the influx of the amount of shows that have been filming here. And what are some of the benefits of shooting here? And I guess sort of maybe thinking in the future, if you do have it, where do you see it going in the next 10 years? And we'll start with Tony on this one.
Oh gosh, hi, back again. I knew you were coming. So I just think like Chicago is a character, you know what I mean? Like, and it's been brought to life throughout the years in Chicago, starting, you know, before even my time. Show movies like Mahogany, like my mom, I like Mahogany. I like that movie, and Ordinary People, and like the way that John Hughes evolved to Chicago and showed where he grew up, and all those New Triers. We shot first Home Alone in New Trier. We built that house inside the gymnasium at New Trier. I was pushing a broom back then. I was a carpenter's assistant and stuff like that. Like, but like this evolution I'm talking about now, it's like, it's so evolved. And like when you walk down the breezeway and, you know, just, I'm very fortunate to be, you know, like in that breezeway when there was one show there, you know, and, you know, these guys underemployed, and what was the other thing called Playboy Club and stuff like that. Like, and this studio is a big part of it, this, you know, the cine space, but also in the growth of Cine Cares project, which is, for me, I just think it's the best idea that's come along in the last 20 years on how to cultivate young talent and get people to be interested in the business. And I really think it's a big part. And a lot of people will ask this question, how do we get in this business? And how do you, well, you be vigilant. You want to show up on a set, you could go on a website now and find out where we are every day. And people, you know, and it's just finding where's Chicago Fire shooting at. Well, permits were put out by Mono and his gang, and that's how they figure it out, you know, like, but you show up on set and then you could start to see how it works first and see if it is for you. And when we have young people that show up on set and work with us, we try to push them forward by giving them knowledge. Don't stick your finger in that hole and you get electrocuted. You know what I'm saying? Like, we start there. We start like, this is a dangerous business. I know it's all flair and, you know, it's like, oh, look at the balloons. It's the squirrel type of thing with the dog. You know, it's like, no, you have to be focused. And then Do I want to be an extra first? Do I want to be maybe a camera person? I want to be a studio mechanic. You know, it's like there's a lot of things. And I find people in the street that I put onto the painters all the time and to the carpenters. Hey, what do you do? Are you a carpenter, dude? What do you do? Call this number, 775-773-5300, 476. Call those numbers. Try to get your foot in the door. And that's how you do it. It's persistence. And every person that failed on Broadway was because maybe they didn't have the drive that's needed to be in Broadway, you know, but it's the same thing with Chicago. You have to want it in Chicago. And once you want it and you have that infectious, like it gets to you, you're like, I want to be on set, you know, like sometimes I'd walk across the street when I was a youth, I'd be working on a commercial in Grant Park, and I walk across the street to the Hilton, and I'd start another commercial over there, or I was shooting, or the Beast was shooting at the time, another TV show, or Cupid, or this or that. But I was always trying to be on a set, and that's how you get into this business, by persistence. And Facebook now is you could follow these different shows around and see if they're for you or not. And I think one of the cool shows right now is The Chi, and it shows Chicago in a light that I want to see, you know what I mean? And it's got cool lighting and cool camera work and stuff like that, and the characters are believable. And like when we did like movies like Chi-Raq, you know, like I never felt uncomfortable or like I was threatened in these neighborhoods, because I'm always accepted as like a filmmaker. We're visiting, that's what we are, you know. But I always feel like just recently, you know, the dangers of being in a bad neighborhood or something. But what neighborhood's a good neighborhood? How do you know when a gun is going to go off down the street? Nobody knows where lightning strikes, you know what I mean? So having your eyes open and being vigilant is like huge, and you could do it in this business. And that's why I tell these kids now, just try. You've got to try.
Thank you. That's really good. Mana, do you want to kind of follow up with that? You sort of had a history with working in California, and you've worked here in Chicago, and you see a lot with locations. They see a lot and they communicate with a lot. So, what are the benefits of shooting here, and where do you see things kind of going for Chicago?
Benefits of shooting here. I mean, they're, in terms of the actual city of Chicago, I mean, it will be the same as you would anywhere else, right? But it's really, to me, it's the community that's here. People, we just think differently, more kind of family oriented. It's not a bunch of infighting in terms of the actual crews, because it's a long history of filmmakers here. And like Tone said, the city itself, the benefit of the city itself is it's its own character. So again, getting into what the things that I love about this city, I love it so much that I wanted to work in the locations department because of my love for the architecture and the fact that we're on a grid system, and the fact that I've got to know a lot of the people in a lot of the, hey doggy, I got to work with a lot of people in different suburbs as well, in terms of the different townships, and dealing with the village halls of those communities as well, but Chicago, in terms of its future, I mean, first of all, thank goodness to the tax incentive, right? I'm sure the entire room, for those that really maybe not sure what that is basically filming here has been incentivized by and across the nation, through the government and the local film offices. So I think we're still at 30% for the incentive program. So what happens is, if a show comes and they spend $1 million, and at the end of the year, that company gets to write off that 30%, get some kind of a tax credit off of their filings, or you could sell that credit for cash for people that are looking to obtain a 30% credit for something else they're doing. But I mean, you can look all of that up. But so that back when I did Barbershop, right? that we had that huge incentive signed on that film set by Blagojevich before he went on vacation. So it's sort of that brought in a lot of, and I think Illinois did their tax incentive the right way, right? So it wasn't cut out, it wasn't designed for above the line. You have to be a Chicago resident. So things like that, like other states, they kind of just threw it all in. Like, other states are like, well, above the line, we don't care if you live here or not. So people were flocking just to Michigan, years ago to kind of jump in on that, because Michigan received it was so much going on in Michigan right after they brought their tax incentive online. But in terms of the future, because it has been such a character, there's multiple studios and the talks now being built here where we are located for Chicago Fire. CineSpace is phenomenal, and they're building new stages, but the old school stages are Chicago Studio City. And then there's these small little insert stages that are all over the city as well. But in terms of the future, Ronan, I think that it's sky's the limit for us, especially as long as we have the space to film an actual project, offices to house these productions and stages to so that we can build these sets. Chicago's going to grow just like all of these other industries here, a very strong union base here. But for me, the big part is it really feels like family, that it's not granted, don't get me wrong, guys, it's blue collar, top to bottom, right? We're out here, we're pounding the pavement, working rain, sleet, snow, whatever, right? So I don't want to give anybody the illusion that the work that we do isn't hard, right? It's mentally taxing, but you have to have the desire. First of all, let's start with that. You're like Tony said, you maybe you want to jump in and try to figure out if this is something you want to do because you don't really know. Right now it looks glamorous, and right now it's like, oh my God, I've been dreaming about that. And then the reality hits, it's like, this is actually it's actually work, right? It's actual work. Whatever that department is, you are, these departments only have a certain number of crew people they can have in their department. So the people they choose to put in those departments is very particular. And your path to get that, to get to that spot, oh my God, it's 3,000 ways to do it, right? Like Tone said, it's, Facebook, I'm sure postings at your college, friends that you may know that have worked with somebody that they, or my relative is over here. Like, it's my path, is literally my desire, like I talked about before, to do this. And I kind of pursued it in a way where I knew I wanted to do it at a very early age by looking at these humongous, pedestal cameras on the Bozo show, right? So I've been thinking about this my entire life. Some people kind of luck up on it. A friend may need an extra guy, and that person's fresh out of college. They're like, okay, well, I didn't major in it, and then you realize you actually like it. So the paths, and I'm sure if you talk to all of us, every single path is unique. So there's no one way at all. But having your ear open, having the desire, you'll find out. If you see a movie set filming somewhere, like, it could be as simple as that. I mean, who knows? But park somewhere, not in the permitted zone, but park somewhere, go up to a crew member and say, hey, who do I talk to? I always wanted to do this. It could be that. It could be, like Tone said, going on social media, figuring out all of these Facebook pages. Hey, how do I, you go to your counselor if you're still in school, your friend's mom saw some filming happening, and a friend of hers is a hairdresser that knows somebody that, it's so many different ways. So don't get discouraged. The big thing is, do not get discouraged, because there's many paths to this. There's so many paths. So don't get discouraged. Cinecares, like I said, like Tone said, is a more of a direct way, and I'm sure there's information about that online. But It's more of a direct path nowadays, which is great, but don't get discouraged. Keep, if the desire is there, you have to keep pushing for it. And it's going to be many, many no's in the beginning. No, okay, I'll take your number, I'll call you back. Be persistent. I'm sure all of us have received phone calls from someone looking for work. And we've been on the other side of that, where we've called people looking for work. And if you get discouraged because they haven't called you back yet, then you're dead in the water, right? But keep calling. Hey, sorry, hey, I called you last week, but whenever you get a chance, call me back. Wait another week or two. Hey, just reaching out one more time. Be persistent. You got to be persistent, because that sometimes if we're working on a show where we're shooting nights, we're not necessarily insensitive, but it may be a show where we're shooting nights, and we only have a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday before we got to go back. So just be persistent and just don't give up in terms of your if you have the desire, just keep pushing and figure it out. There's so many different ways.
Thank you for that amazing answer, Mano. That was very, very awesome. And yeah, we're close to the end, but we'll have enough time to get Ella and Tim in there. So Ella, advice on breaking in, you can talk about, of course, like your specific department. And if you could, I think, we both went to DePaul and we made the transition into working in the film industry. If you're able to talk about that, like how, going to even Columbia or DePaul, or even just like a film school in the year, how does that help with finding jobs here?
Yeah, I think the biggest asset that film schools in Chicago have are the connections. A lot of the faculty are former people who worked in the industry, so they know a lot of people who are still working, who they can connect students with. But also it's the student to student network. Like, a lot of my first jobs in the industry were because of students I knew who were either alumni or current students who recommended me for something. And then that's still happening. Like, so many of my closest friends on set are people that I went to school with. So it's been really beautiful to have a community that I'm kind of growing together with. For people wanting to break in, I think I totally agree with Mano. Persistence is key. But I would also say relationships are really important. For my department, for camera department, the way that we hire people is based off of who we know and who we can trust, because once we get on set, it's really busy. We need people who we know can thrive under pressure, who we can count on, who are reliable. So it's really important to us when we're hiring people that they're people that we trust. And so it can be kind of hard to break in at first. You'll probably get a lot of no's or just non-responses, but you do need to be persistent, and also put yourself in places where you can start to build relationships with people. For camera, that often means going to rental houses, interfacing with people there. A lot of camera assistants come from working at the rental houses because they're able to meet working camera assistants while they're working at the rental house and then kind of make that transition. There are other people I know who started as production assistants in the production department, and they worked as PAs, but would talk with the camera department when they had a free moment and would learn from the camera department when they were able to teach them things, and then they made that move over. And then there are some people, a lot fewer, who started as camera PAs or camera interns, which is a great way to learn, because you're in the camera department, you're learning directly from those people the whole time, but there are just very few camera PA positions in the city. So and then there are other people who like work on non-union sets and things like that. There are plenty of times where there are people who work on the big TV shows who on the weekends are going and shooting their passion projects. They need crew. They'll bring people out sometimes. And, if they meet someone there that they really hit it off with, they'll try to help them out if they're trying to break into the industry. So yeah, I think it's for me, it's really about building relationships and building trust.
Awesome. Oh, I was muted. Great. And Tim, we'll finish off with you.
Yeah, I mean, to reiterate things that are already said, everyone's got their own path, and you never can anticipate what that path is. So taking every opportunity to work on something, in college, I worked on so many student films and independent films. It's just, they're endless. It was endless. And the experience I got on that would eventually lead me to have success later in the internship that I have. So just work on everything that you can, be involved in every way. Once you find your opportunity to get on set, be dependable. That's such a critical thing. Nobody's looking at your resume to see your GPA. Nobody's going to necessarily look at your resume to see where you went to school. If you don't show up on time, you're done. Like that's, so you got to be dependable. You got to be self-sufficient. You got to pay attention. You got to want it because, like was already said, it's work. It's a lot of hard work. You might end up working in the winter at night in the snow for 3 days straight, and it's not fun. There's really challenging things in the film industry, and it will test you to your soul. So you really do need to want it. Never take no for an answer. Work every angle you can. Accept responsibility when it's given to you. Don't screw around with it. That's how things evolved. And in COVID land now, you never know who's going to go out sick, and you're never going to know if you get that combat promotion. We had a couple of days ago where it was like the junior team, man. It was the new generation was running the show. It was amazing. So read the room, and just hold on to it when you get it.
Hey, Ronan, can I just add one thing to that?
Absolutely.
And this is for people that, like, everybody has a school, right, that they go to. And I have this saying that I went to UCLA. I tell people that all the time. And these guys, and it's kind of a joke, but it's true. I went to University of Cicero Laramie Avenue. Like, I was on the street. That was my school, and Sammy Bertone used to say it too. God rest his soul, one of my best friends, you know what I mean? Like, we learned in the street, because at the time, sometimes school isn't right for everybody. And just know this, you don't need to go to colleges to learn this business. You can see it for yourself. And sometimes the best filmmakers are the ones that came from the streets. And it does have a value for sure, and quick on your feet for sure. So
no, thank you.
And
Go ahead. Yeah.
If I can just add one thing. So after all of these things that we're talking about, you're in, right? You've spoken with people, you've interned maybe, right? You've now on the job, maybe you're even in the union or somewhat, but the most important thing to remember is that you're only as good as your last job, right? It's a saying that we've said forever and ever and ever, right? And that translates into work this job, right? Because you have the mindset of this job's going to get me the next job. So then that should keep you squared enough, meaning you show up. If you're on time, you're late, right? Like Tone mentioned.
Great answer. Great answer.
And you're being extremely consistent and diligent in what you do, right? If you're working in the camera department, you just so happen to be one of these assistants where you can actually hold a lens that's God knows how much money, right? So your focus has to be there all of the time. Tone works with, in addition to all the things he's talking about, but these little highlights that if he's careless with that, right? And he pokes an actor, whatever the thing is. So you're only as good as your last job. I just wanted to, so take from that what you want, but understand what I'm saying. The job you're working right now could be your last if you're horrible at it. And you might get another shot or two. But just, again, it goes to the consistency part of it all, but just keep that thought in mind.
No, thank you for building on top of that, because we have a half hour left, so I want to get into just a few Q&A questions and kind of building off kind of what you were saying, Mon, and what Tony was saying. Like me, Tim, Ella, we kind of did high school, went to college, we did film school, and then we graduated, and we kind of just went that way. And I think you two had a very unique career trajectory. So I'm curious, for those that are maybe in college and they didn't major in film and TV directly, or maybe they're not in college and it's kind of difficult, like what are some of the, ways that they could get into this without having to go to film school? Like what are some of the common things you've you've seen, you know, Tony, you mentioned you went to UCLA. So how does, I guess, kind of expanding on that a little bit.
Well, for me, you know, you know, again, while in college, I, you know, did the short film route, you know, worked on any and everyone's short film, from craft service to, you know, production assistant. You know, I wanted to learn, like Tony mentioned very early on this call, so many different aspects of this business. So in that, I've been production assistant, key production assistant, second AD, first AD, and then a assistant coordinator, and then a production coordinator. And I worked in commercials as a unit production manager and a producer and those things. So, but to me, again, the way to, if you are not going to go to school, if maybe you, different circumstances, you know, again, whatever, if you're not into college, and the way, a path in, again, it's more just about, who do you know? If it's not someone you know, who does your neighbor know? Is there's a film crew filming over there? Like, it's not, there's no, and I'm sorry to kind of dance around that, Ronan, but it's no real direct way to get in. It's now, obviously, having someone or a relative or friend or someone, a friend of a friend or something helps, because it's just one introduction is kind of what you would need to get one step closer to someone. But literally driving past one of these sets, you're close to, you know, 150 people that, you know, any one of them you could possibly talk to about it. But again, there's no real, there's no direct way. What would you say, Tone? Like, what would you say to that? You're muted.
I just say, like, for myself, like, the people that I try to get into the business, it's like, I feel like there is no set route. You know what I mean? Like, I see these DePaul kids, they park right next to us, and I see the DePaul kids, and I look them in the eye and I start singing that, you know, Whitney Houston song, that children are our future. You know what I'm saying? Like, how important is that? Like, the youth of this business, I love it. I think it's a part of it, and they'll be done with an old guy like me and a guy like you at a point, you know, and that's cool, because you go off into, and you give this torch, this wonderful thing, this machine that we created in Chicago, and you know it, and not me, not you, but everybody created this huge, I mean, right now it is so ripe. And I look at in Atlanta too, like, you can walk up on a set there and say, hey, I'm a mechanic. And you know what? If I was a guy, I'd say, well, he works with his hands. He's into an engine. He knows how to, hey, my generators are broken. Let's put him on as a permit and let's see what he could do. You know what I mean? Like, in Chicago, I feel it was the same way. And it'll be that way again. You know, right now it's, you know, how, you know, the business changes so quickly. Like, sometimes we, you know, back in the day, we'd have 1 or 2 movies a year, you know what I mean? Like, and that was it. But now it's like 4 or 5 television projects, a little movie, a pilot. And so there's room for people to get out there, and don't be discouraged. Just got to do it, man. Yep.
And if I could say one other point to that, to Tony's point. So I have someone working with us right now who had never worked in the film business before, right? But they had a sales background. They have a background in sales, right?
Yeah.
So working in whatever the sales space was, but that to me immediately meant that, one, you know how to talk to people, you know how to not take no for an answer, you know how to do that kind of work. So I'm willing to give you a shot. And this person is lights out phenomenal. That's Alberto, for those, Alberto, one of my new.
Oh my God. Yes.
He's great. Like, this is his first time job, right? Before that, this person, her name is Keela Allen. So Keela was, you know, a friend of someone that was looking for work, but I knew that she worked for Comcast. She installed boxes and lines from your house and installed TV. So again, logistics and little handsy things, right? So I'm like dealing with the customer, and I'm like, that again, that in this department is a really good fit, because that you're telling me you have no idea what's going on with that house. You're walking into it as a blank slate. Any obstacle could be there. So you have to think about, all right, how am I going to get there? So I just saw that and got into her mindset. I'm like, all right, no, she could do this just because of all you did that for 7 years. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's talk about, let's talk about a spot on here for you, because just no, I don't know that if you're telling me that that's what you've done, I'm not necessarily going to call your supervisor and say, hey, how was she? Or how was he? Within a day of being on set, I would know, right? You'd stick out like a sore thumb if you did not do the things that you were telling me that you did. But anyway, I just wanted to say that point. And, again, the paths are endless.
I think that's a good point to bring up, because there's a lot of people on this call that, are, maybe not directly, film students. So they're always kind of, asking like, well, how do I do it? And I remember someone telling me, like, when I was looking for work was, because it applies to being a film student too. Like, you really don't have any, like, how can you apply for something if you don't have like the experience? Like, your resume is like, it's not going to really exist. And someone always told me, because they asked, like, well, what do you do for work? And I said, well, I work in a kitchen. I used to work in restaurants. And they're like, you were a line cook, like you could like use the skill, like pull the skills that you know how to do from that, talk about that. And then when someone says like, well, why do I want to hire you? Like, you were a cook, like, oh, well, I know how to do this. And I know that your department, kind of handles this. So it's very similar to, so it's like, use the experience that you have. And I think one of those two people is a great example. Like, there's a lot of applicable stuff in film that a lot of people don't realize. And I think that that's really great. And I think I'll toss this question to Tim and Ella, maybe the last one, depending on how you answer it. Ties into also, the intimidation factor of like applying or even just trying to reach out. It's like, oh my God, like I don't know anything. So it's like, how can I, like I've never been a PA before. And so people always tell you like, well, no one's been a PA before. You just kind of got to go for it. So, and getting over the intimidation factor and knowing that like you learn a lot on the job. And, when you two are hiring like a camera PA or a set PA, what are you looking for when somebody that is, trying to just be like an entry level thing? And we've talked about like drive and focus and like determination, things like that. But, what are some of the other factors? And I guess also maybe kind of clarifying, like, you do learn a lot on the job and like, that's okay.
Yeah. You learn a lot. The intimidation factor for me, I don't know if this is true for everyone else, but for me, it's never gone away. So if you feel intimidated about applying for a job, you're in good company, I think. Like I said before, every time you open up a script, every time you get to set, there's something new there that you've not done before, and you got to like figure it out. So what I look for, dependability, showing up on time, self-sufficiency. Are you paying attention? Can you read the room? Those are all things we talked about. Another kind of element to think about too is, you're going to be working maybe 80 hours a week with this person. Do you like them? Is this person nice? Is it uncomfortable to spend time around this person? That's something that we also look at. There's a lot of teamwork in the AD department and everywhere on a film set. Is this person going to be able to function in a team? Humility, ego, those are things that we're going to look at for sure.
And then Ella, yeah, I just don't want to give you a time constraint. It'll end at the webinar will end at 1 o'clock. So don't want to short your answer, but just to give you a heads up.
Yeah, I mean, everything Tim said is spot on. And I think generally from first meeting someone, you can kind of tell whether or not they're going to be a good fit because of all those kind of inherent qualities. For me, like my big three are they hardworking? Are they a fast learner? And are they a pleasant person to be around? Because yeah, I'm going to spend so much time with anyone who we bring out on set. I'm going to see them more often than I'm going to see my partner. And so it's really important that you can get along with people. And especially when you're starting out, yeah, you don't know everything. You probably have a lot to learn, and we definitely are all started somewhere, but I think the key is being open to learning. One of the kind of biggest letdowns is when we bring someone out who's new and we know that they're new, but then they kind of try to act like they know everything and aren't open to learning things. And if you aren't open to learning things, then we can't teach you things and help you get better and get on that road to growth. So those are definitely the big things that I look out for.
Nice answer.
Yeah, it could be spotted a mile away. So just
Yeah.
be humble.
Fake.
Right.
Yeah.
Remain humble, man. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining me on this Saturday morning. And I know you guys work a lot of hours and you put a lot of time and energy into work. So I really appreciate you taking your time out. It really means a lot. It was a really fun discussion. We talked a lot about really cool stuff. There's some questions that popped in the chat about getting in touch with panels. I'll say in general, if there's public information on how to get in touch with Chicago Fire at the Illinois and the Chicago Film Office. So if you want to get in touch with shows about, inquiries about work and stuff, you can look at the Chicago Film Office and there's information there. And then if, you can inquire that way. I'll leave it up to the panels. If you did want to put, information that you want to people get in touch with you in the chat, I'll leave that up to you. But otherwise, unless that's pretty much it for the discussion.
Thanks, Ronan, dude. You put this together and that's what we're talking about. I already said it to you before. I like your style, think you're a great guy, and you know what? You made this happen and it was really fun to be part of it. And this whole panel probably feels the same.
Same here, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
For
buddy.
sure. Listen, I'll say this, because we're always looking for fresh meat in this very specific location. I mean, you know, in addition to all of these other wacky guys on this panel, like this department is like the mindset is really out there, right? But I'm gonna just say this: monolocations@gmail.com. If you're interested in it, that's what I would say. I don't just because, you know, or if you want to just, you know, chat more, you can go through Ronan or you go through me. But yeah, because I'm always interested in the next generation, and we would prefer, as you know, being old heads in this business, that if you're going to come in, you need to learn it the right way.
Yeah,
right?
true.
Because, you know, your potential, you may have potential, but in the very beginning, maybe you're nervous, or maybe your pride got in the way and you didn't allow yourself to learn or be taught. Yeah. And then you be kicked to the curb pretty quickly. When if you come in as a humble individual and, you know, accept your lumps, you know, if you screw up, you know, you got to think about it. You know, the phrase "time is money," you know, you can monetize every single minute of a day on the film set, right? So for someone whose pride is getting in the way and they won't accept what's being taught to them, then you're costing not only time, but you're actually, you know, costing money. So I'm not going to want you around, you know. So just again, remain humble in your journey.
Yeah, and if people want to find you, like, how did they find you other than you just gave them an email? I'm on Instagram, Bones Lullo. You could get me there, on Facebook under my name, Anthony Lullo. If you want to follow, that's great. If you could see what we do behind the scenes. Sorry, Ella, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna build on what Mano said about being open to learning. Like when I started out, I wanted so much to prove to people that I knew things. So when people would start explaining things to me that I already knew, I would kind of try to like get ahead of them to prove to them that I knew these things. But I actually learned that it was better, even if I already knew what they were talking about, to let them teach me, because oftentimes they would then continue to teach me. They would continue to talk about something that I didn't know, and I would learn something from that conversation, or I would just build a relationship with them. So, you know, later in the day or the next day, they would come back to me and have more things to tell me that I didn't already know. So that was a big learning curve for me, was to be open to learning and not feel like I needed to prove myself all the time, because I proved myself through my work.
Absolutely. Two more things before we finish up that I want to mention. This is a recording of the recording of this webinar will be up on the Chicago NATAS website. So you can view it there if you missed any cool tidbits of information. And I put in the chat as well, the 64th annual Chicago Midwest Emmy Awards are December 3rd. We are looking for volunteers. So the people who are interested in kind of getting in, this is a great way to sign. This is a great way to get involved and sign up. And then I believe that's everything for me. John, Afia, or Rebecca, did you have any closing remarks?
Nothing in particular for me, John.
No, you covered it all. I just like to thank the panelists. A great job. The reception just in the chat field alone has been great. So thank you so much, and thanks especially to Ronan Morrissey, who's our junior board president, for organizing.
Woo, Ronan.
And doing such a great job as moderator. So thank you so much, Ronan. Also, obviously, Afia Owusu, who's our workshop chair on the main board. And she's got a number of additional great workshops throughout the year that she's already planning. And of course, our executive director, Rebecca Cowan. We couldn't be here without Rebecca, who does just about everything for the board. So yeah, again, for those of you interested in signing up to work on the 64th Annual Emmy Awards, the sign-up sheets in the chat field. And then our next workshop, I was mistaken, it's December 10th, Saturday, December 10th at 10 a.m., majoring in the media. And that's for all the high school and college kids who are still trying to determine what if they're interested in majoring in media. So definitely, if you have high schoolers or college students that you definitely want to have them sign up for this. So thanks again to the panelists. Thanks again to Ronan for organizing this, and we'll see you at the Emmys on December 3rd at the Marriott Hotel.
Can I also say that we have scholarships as well. So if you're currently in college, we have scholarships for juniors heading into their senior year. It's a $6,000 scholarship. And believe it or not, we don't get a lot of applicants. So I'm finding this even with my own child who's a senior in high school. You got to apply for the scholarships in order to be considered. And it doesn't take a lot of time. And like Ronan said, we are looking for volunteers for our Emmy Awards. I have the link there. And I just want to say the panelists were excellent. And I love I love when you say, like, you just got to show up and show that you're interested, that you want to work, and that you're humble. And you can tell within the first couple hours if this person's going to be good or not. And it's just about your attitude. And, are you willing to come in and just work hard and do whatever you got to do? And are you nice to people? So you can't come in just expecting to be, the director and be a little diva and et cetera, et cetera. So just have fun with it and be nice to people. So if you have any questions, also feel free to send me an email as well, and I'm happy to help out. But we also have Career Day in March too, in April, where we bring in people who are from different aspects in the television business, including news and including like production and stuff like that. So keep in touch with us.
And as Ronan mentioned, the entire panel discussion for today will be online at some point this week on our website, chicagoemmyonline.org.
And Ronan, you're a rock star.
Thanks. All right, that's it. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Woo.
Thank you all. This is great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.
Take care.
Excellent job, guys.
Great job.
Peace.